has, give up everything he has to come and follow him. So what I wanted to do today was kind of apply that same message and kind of put a twist on it so where it relates to all of us younger people and maybe for some of the adults here too. So what I want to focus on today is that we are the rich young rulers, especially the younger generation here. And I know like a lot of us don't have the money yet, we don't have jobs, we don't have all the success that we're wanting, but that's not what makes us rich at this time, okay? What makes us rich is that we're rich in the amount of time we have, we're rich in the amount of friends and relationships that we have with everyone, and rich in our ideas and all our ambitions. And there's nothing wrong with chasing after success, having all these huge ambitions. There's nothing wrong with that, and I actually encourage everybody to do that. But what basically hurts us is when we tend to chase after everything else, that we forget to add God to our plan. And we forget to live a life that's centered around Christ. So how do we forget to live a life that's centered around Christ? Well, when we start putting other things before God, we end up making them our idols. And I know most people think that idols are just like another statue that we may worship, but it's not. It doesn't always have to be a statue that we worship to make them our idols. What become our idols are things that are so important to us that we start choosing them first over God. And we lose our identity in that, and our true identity is in Christ. So what does that mean? So if I introduce myself for the very first time, as many of you guys know, I love playing basketball, right? It's just a big hobby of mine. So if I say, hey, I'm Clinton Mussey, I'm a basketball player. Or if somebody says, hey, my name is Steve, I'm a doctor. Or my name is John, and I'm a Fortnite player. You know, we become so interested in making our title, making a name for ourselves, that we forget that we become so invested in making our title, making our name, that we lose our identity, and we lose ourselves through it. Then we start thinking, man, that I'm nothing more than just a basketball player. I'm nothing more than a doctor. I'm nothing more than a nurse. I'm nothing more than a guitar or a tuba player. And that's not true. If all that stuff ever gets taken away from you, you're so much more than that, right? Because your identity is first in Christ. That's where your foundation is. So what I want to say is that God has so much planned for you, and if you ever feel like, you know, your identity is in any one of these things that I just mentioned, or even something else, I want you to just forget that mindset and just know that your identity is in Christ first. And you're never going to lose it, because no one is ever going to take that away from you. It was already paid on the cross, and it was paid when Jesus shed his blood for us. So I know a lot of times when things start to go well for us, we forget God. But as soon as something goes bad, the first person we go to is God. And we'll say, oh God, please help me through this. And when God does help you, you forget to just go back to him again. And personally, that's something I did growing up a lot. I made all these decisions, trying to take matters into my own hands. Choosing what school I wanted to go to, choosing who I wanted to hang out with, where I wanted to spend my time, who I wanted to like, and who I wanted to hate. I never just prayed and asked God to guide me and show me what his will was for me. And I always thought I knew what was best for me. And honestly, that led me to run away from God, just like the rich young ruler did when he told him to give it all up and follow him. But for me, that meant giving up my ego, okay? And being a young person at that time, that's not something I could do. I couldn't just give up my ego. And then whenever my dad passed away, and just being, and like at such a critical age, not really having a father figure to look up to, I was very stubborn. I thought I knew what was best for me. I had to learn everything by myself, and I had to be more responsible. And from that is how I developed this ego that I had. And I thought I could just do it all by myself. I don't need anybody's help. And things like that, when you start believing that you can just do everything by yourself at such a young age, and especially wanting to take matters into your own hand and not trusting people that God has implanted in your life to guide you, that's going to cause you to run away from God. So 3 points that I want to bring up today are, 1, what running from God looks like, 2, what running from God leads to, and 3, what God is willing to go through to bring you back. So from the first point, what running from God looks like. The first thing is that it looks like disobedience. Okay? It's the very first thing that you do is you disobey. You disobey God first, and then you start to disobey your family. The second thing is delayed disobedience, which is how it all starts. Okay, so that's like saying no or not right now. I'm gonna stop doing this soon, or I'll start doing this soon. I know growing up, I wanted to fit in so badly with all of my friends, and in middle school especially, high school, and college. There's, you want to, not in college, I think in college you're trying to find yourself, but in high school and middle school, you want to fit in so badly, and you want to be the popular and the cool kids. Which again is another example of having that false identity, because you want to fit in, you want to be like, oh, hey, there's Quinton, there's that cool kid, or there's Rolly, there's that cool guy over there. And all that coolness is one day just going to go away, and then what's going to happen to you? Your identity goes away, and you're going to fall into that same trap of, oh, maybe I'm not worth anything anymore. So that's something I would always want to do. I was always trying to fit into some group, some clique. I would much rather hang out with my friends than come to Bible study. And I would say, I don't want to start reading the Bible today. I'm too tired. I have a test this week. I'll start reading as soon as I'm done with my test. Or that I'll wait till I graduate to start getting involved with church and fixing my spiritual life and growing in it. So, running from God, it doesn't happen all of a sudden. Okay, you don't just one day wake up and you're like, oh, I don't want to follow God anymore. Oh, I don't love God anymore. It doesn't start like that. It's a drift. You slowly start making small choices or decisions that lead you off your path that God has planned for you. So it starts with a small temptation every time, okay? And for everybody, it's different. The devil always comes as, he doesn't always come as something scary. He doesn't always come as something that's hideous or to try to scare you away. He'll come as something that's very attractive to you. So, it could be success. It could be money. It could be a girl, a guy, whatever it is. Just for a split second to take your eyes off of Jesus. And then when you take your eyes off of Jesus for that split second is when he attacks. And slowly, you start taking your eyes off Jesus and you slowly start getting away from that path. And those are the decisions that you make every single day, right? So that's how important the decisions are that we make. So second point of the sermon is what running from God leads to. Number one, running from God leads to discipline. As we read in Proverbs 3:11-12, it says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves." Hebrews 12:5-6 says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines those he loves." So now see, even when you're running away and you're trying to go away from God in every aspect of your life, he still is so willing to correct you and bring you back, and not let you live in that same sin of life that you've been living in. The second thing that running away from God leads to is destruction. And I want you to pay attention to this part carefully because it could get confusing, but I'll explain it later on in the message. Destruction. So God brings destruction into your life not to have payback on us. He's not that type of God that if you mess up, he's just going to just bring a whole load of disaster into your life on purpose. Just to say, oh, you weren't listening to me, so I'm going to do this. No, but he does it so he can bring us back to him. So think about it. Like I said before, what's the first thing that you guys do when something bad happens in your life? You pray, oh God, please help me do this, help me, take it away from me. That's the first thing you do, and that's the first thing you want, is you to go to him, right? So thirdly, sin has consequences. And the consequences it has is the hope that it will grab your attention and bring you back to him so you don't run even further away. So in your time of distress, when something goes wrong in your life, I encourage you to go to God for that support. Go to him for healing and guidance. And don't rely on materialistic things that bring you happiness. For me, I know whenever I had something going on in my life, I would pray and then I'm just, okay, God can take care of it, not even fully understanding what that means. Because since we're kids, we're taught to pray to God and just read your Bible and everything's going to be okay. So I did that, and I did the basic stuff, and then I would go buy shoes or clothes or something to try to make me happy. And you don't get that satisfaction when something's going on. You're just delaying what's going on and just kind of hindering it from coming up and actually dealing with what's going on in your life. And I know that in today's society, everybody's so judgmental of every single thing you do, and the pressure to be like this perfect kid is really high, right? So we tend to forget that no matter what we do, we're going to be very imperfect, okay? We're going to be the most imperfect people. That's just how we are. That's why we're humans. Otherwise, we would be God. So we're very imperfect. We're going to sin. People are always going to mess up one way or another, okay? You're going to end up slipping up. If you say, I'm going to try to live a sinless life, I promise you it's not going to happen. You're going to slip up every once in a while. And when that happens, you have to know that it's okay if you do slip up, okay? It's okay if you slip up once in a while, but you need to go back to God and tell him what's going on. Help him, ask him to help you to get through that. And you need to realize that even though we are all imperfect, we're made perfect through him, okay? And it will happen once we find our identity in Christ. So there were so many times in my life where I would just make these choices of not going to God first and just making my own decisions on what to do, how to handle certain situations I was in. So then finally I was just like, Clint, what are you doing? Why are you trying to lead your own life? Maybe now it's time to take a back seat. And as soon as I decided to take the back seat and just kind of let God handle everything and just pray every single day about what it is that's happening, asking him to lead me, that's when I realized how good God was and how real he is. So the fourth thing in what running from God looks like is that God is going to discipline every single child of his. And how does he do that? He's not going to come and spank you. He's not going to slap you from heaven. It doesn't work like that. What he does is he brings pain into your life, okay? So God is going to allow pain in our life to bring us back to him. You guys are probably very familiar with the story of Job. Job was a very good guy, and then the devil was talking to God and was like, I can make him turn away from you, or whatever it is, and God brings all these disasters into his life, and look how faithful he was to him throughout the whole time. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make with this whole thing is, bad things will happen to you at this age, especially growing up. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to be surrounded by all these temptations, and you have to be strong throughout all the storms that come through your life, just like Job was. And that's the perfect example I would encourage everyone to just kind of be like. So when you have nowhere else to go, you need to realize that God is waiting for you to come to him. When you're so hurt from whatever it is that's causing you pain, you need to realize that God is there waiting for you. And growing through the phases and storms, I grew up when we're so hard. These past couple of years, most people don't know, I don't really share my life that much with people, but it was just a whole bunch of storms, back to back to back. And I'm so glad that the first thing I did was just go to God and kind of just pray through all those things, okay? And stay committed to him. Stay faithful to him. Because your prayers always aren't going to be answered the first time you pray, okay? It's not going to be like, Jesus, please help me through this. The next day, it's just going to be fixed. So God does these things in your life where he makes you go through different trials and different tribulations to help you grow and become stronger through all of that, right? So finally, after letting God take control of my life and letting him in and leading him into what his plan was for me. At first, when that happened to me, I didn't know what to do, and I know we always complain, and that's just like our first thing to do is we're like, God, why are you allowing this to happen in my life? Why are you letting another bad week happen? I've been praying, I've been reading the Bible, why is nothing being fixed? How many people here can relate to that? I'm pretty sure everybody can. So, but that's one of the things about being a Christian, is I know we have this mindset of once we're a Christian, everything's just going to go well for us. And it never happens that way. It's not always all fun and games. You won't always have happiness 7 days of the week, right? So we're going to go through these seasons of storms in our life. We're going to go through trials and tribulations. And we need to learn to carry our own cross. And that's what makes us stronger Christians. When you go through a storm and you come out at the end of it, you learn from what happened and you grow from it. So at some point, we have to look at ourselves and we got to ask, how are we going to take that next step of maturing as a Christian and realizing that life is tough and trying to fit in is tough. Trying to be liked by everybody, it's tough. It's impossible. Getting the lowest GPA is tough, Not